Yeah. So Maxine is the third part of the Ty West horror trilogy. Started with X in 2022. Then it was the prequel film Pearl, and then now it is Maxine coming out. And then he filmed X and Pearl back to back, as Nick was saying.
Nice.
Just like, hey,
Oh,
might as well
wow.
shoot another movie while out here. We got Mia Goth, and Mia Goth is the star of all three of these movies here. And X was kind of your traditional kind of slasher flick kind of throwback to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
Bit.
On paper, it is that, but there's a lot more, I think, thematically rich material in X when you get to like a second or third viewing of that film.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Then you also had Pearl there, and with Maxine. So what's going on here in Maxine? I was very much anticipating this movie because of I like the X. I like Pearl way more. I think Pearl's my favorite of the series. If this is Maxine, will be my new favorite. We'll let you guys know. But yeah, so this is a different setting here. We have the character here, Maxine Minx, who's in Hollywood now in the 80s, dealing with kind of that paranoia that especially in LA at this time, because it talks about the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, him prowling the streets there, terrorizing women, the serial killer that was out there. You also are trying to have her break into Hollywood, start a career as an actress here, trying to do that with the kind of as she says, the scarlet, in the red scarlet S that's on her, because she also is a porn actress there as well. But she's trying to leave that behind to have a more legitimate career. And while she's all doing that, she has this kind of mysterious person that is following her, that is watching her, that is kind of, threatening her in a sense there.
Yeah, a character that knows about the events of X, which Maxine was able to distance herself from.
And survive.
So it's like, she's trying to figure out also who is this person that is following her. This private detective, who is played by Kevin Bacon, is being paid to do this, to gather research on her, to drop things off to her. And this is also, you have a good cast here. We mentioned Mia Goth, who is the star here, but you also have Elizabeth Debicki, you also have Bobby Cannavale, you got Lily Collins, you got Halsey, you got Kevin Bacon, as mentioned, Giancarlo Esposito, who's not just playing Saul. He's not playing.
Thank fucking God we get Giancarlo not playing Gus again.
He dips into a little at the end, but
yeah.
But the way he does is fantastic given the scene.
Yeah, and he's wearing that the Clippers wig.
Oh, I love that. I love that wig so much.
Yeah,
I'm like,
the one
yes.
Ed O'Neill's wearing his thing.
Yeah.
So you get a good cast here. So my thoughts on I'm gonna pass it around, get you guys' thoughts on it. But I would say for me, it is a little bit of a mixed bag. I'm gonna expand on that after I hear what you guys got to say. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on Maxine here?
As someone freshly out of Maxine, I can confidently say it is a American Dad B plot of Roger trying to be famous in Hollywood, mixed with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but in a way that's not bad. It's a movie that I kind of wanted the Late Night with the Devil to be, of really taking more of the 80s satanic panic and stuff like that, putting that in the background and using the environment a lot more. And while this might be between this and X, it might be my least favorite of them. I'd say the way this movie is shot is incredibly entertaining, and I really love I am thoroughly entertained by the first 2/3 of this movie. It does kind of dip out for me by the third, but it's still something that's, if you like this trilogy, I would suggest seeing this movie. And if you just kind of like more kind of camp horror, or even if you're just interested in the making of Hollywood at the 80s or the time, this is for you. That's a strength all these movies has. It's definitely, I remember the director called this movies about movies, kind of his genre. And it's I was really fascinated by the more kind of start of Hollywood, which is where Pearl takes place, which is kind of why that's my favorite movie. But this is still good.
Nick, what about you?
All right, so
I'm kind of there with you, Mike, in that on face value, I think this is probably the weakest film in Ty West's X trilogy. Now, that being said, I still fucking love this. I love the performance that you get from Mia Goth getting to step back into the character of Maxine, seeing how she has progressed from the events of X and how so much of the events of that film have really influenced her, have really weighed on her as she goes on, is really influencing her arc in this film, because she is being followed by this person. She's being threatened by somebody threatening her career, and how it ties back into X. I think it's very well done. The backdrop of the 1980s with the whole satanic panic, with the rise of Hollywood, and something that I think is done very well is Ty West. He's one of those directors that really knows how to utilize a self-insert almost to a certain extent, like he did with the director character in X, and to an extent he does with Elizabeth Debicki, because she kind of has a similar arc to that character in X, where she knows she's making a sequel to a horror film, and she wants to make this be something that's like more than that, which I think Ty West is very much doing with the whole X trilogy.
Dusk.
The best parts of this movie is by far shit. Yeah, no. The best part of this is Mia Goth. Everything else, the aesthetics, everything that's brought up into it, that's good, and it's strong, and I think that's its best part is the '80s aesthetic, and at least it's trying to talk about the satanic panic and all these things. Unfortunately, it never really finds its full voice. It almost feels like it kind of drifts back and forth between different points. And the first 2/3, you're narrowing in, you're following along with her, trying to figure out who this person is. By the time it gets to that last third, it just never quite gels in the way that I was hoping it to. I think this is unfortunately like probably the most mixed bag I've had of the trilogy, aside from I think the first one. When it's strong, this one probably has the highest highs and the lowest lows if it goes through all of them, which ends up kind of making a bad pacing and back and forth. But when it's good and it does tailor those moments, when it does kind of feel like a bit of a grindhouse, and it feels like it's that 80s aesthetic meeting like a Miss 45 or these kind of really just kind of messed up movies from that time period, or at least they came out back in the 80s. I think that's when it's at its best.
Yeah, and Ty West, with all three of these movies, he's calling back to and paying tribute to very different eras of Hollywood. In X, he's paying tribute to like the early 70s with films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the very beginnings of what we know as the slasher movie today. And Pearl, that's like the 20s, the Technicolor era films, stuff like The Wizard of Oz. And in this, he's paying more tribute to kind of that era of like 80s sleaze with directors like Brian De Palma or Tony Scott to a certain extent.
Yeah, this was the 80s where like, I mean, we see this in the movie, and like it's kind of a theme of like porn industry in the movies and like stuff like that before. But this was also before. I believe this might just be around where like actors could actually get like good contracts, because like back in the day,
this was set in 1985. So
okay,
I think that was before one of the first SAG strikes, where that was like one of the huge disputes.
This was definitely when like Hollywood's still a greasy, slimy place, but it's like it was just a cesspool back then. It was also just like we're gonna give you $100 for 30 movies a day. So keep that up. But like we also see there's a lot of background stuff that's like really great if you know more of like the making of, not the making of, but like kind of the history of Hollywood, kind of slime. I think you would appreciate that. I think this is also kind of like a movie like movie makers would also really like.
Hunter. What's some of your thoughts here?
Yeah, I love this fucking movie. I love this movie so goddamn much. This is the movie that everyone told me that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is, which I will go to my grave saying that movie is clunky and incomplete, and I don't give a shit what anyone says. Yep,
Controversial.
You heard me.
We got a hot take here.
That's a last third. Hey, Quentin, I know your editor died. Find another one, man. Not everything needs to be 3 hours. But I love this movie. Mia Goth is fucking special. She's terrifying. The way that scene in the alley ends that Josh showed the clip of, holy shit, the way that scene ends. I was oh my god.
It really makes you cross your legs in the theater.
I actually I had a very black goddamn reaction in the theater. Luckily there's only 20 people because it was 11 when I saw this, but fucking awesome. I love, not obviously to spoil, but the actual reason for the killer. I went, oh, that's so funny, and that's gonna piss so many people off because it's so realistic. And I'm just like, oh, that's okay. Love that reasoning. The 80s aesthetic is fucking gorgeous. The way that this is shot, having having the VCR lines at points, but there's a beauty to the grossness in a weird way. It's kind of fascinating in that way. I almost walked out because the movie starts by going oh, can we see your breasts? And then they cut away, and I was like, boo, 1 star. But I hung in there. I'm happy I did. The violence ramps up in a way that I thought was so fucking awesome, because you are kind of sitting there okay, there was more killing in the first two. What's going on? And then it starts to ramp up, and then shit starts to get dark, and you're like, okay, now we're. So, I mean, if you're kind of bloodthirsty in that way, you might kind of be like, what the hell? It'll get there. Calm down. I love Bobby Cannavale in this. I'm a huge fan of his, and this feels a little therapeutic after Vinyl got canceled. Seeing him in something like this, I thought he was great. Elizabeth Debicki, we mentioned her. She's absolutely incredible. She deserves more chances and more weird stuff like this. And not to spoil, but Kevin goddamn Bacon in 2 movies this week that I've enjoyed his villain portrayal in. It's hell yeah, man. Yeah, Kevin Bacon's great. So yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of this. I don't know where I'd actually rank this because I enjoy all 3 films for very different reasons. I mean, I think Pearl's still my favorite, but this would kind of be if someone threw 3 adorable cats on me. I couldn't pick between the 3 of them. I just pick, I love you all for different reasons. So, yeah, watch this as soon as you can. Don't see Despicable Me 4. This is a sequel that'll actually give you something. But yeah, really enjoy this.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Well, I think I liked it the least amount of everybody here. I think it's kind of, like I said, a mixed bag here for me. I think Pearl is my favorite one out of all 3 of these movies. And then I think that between this and X, I think maybe I think this has more interesting stuff going on than X, so maybe I put it a little bit above that. X, I think, is fine. I think it's good. I think it's solid there, and it's got some great things about it. But much like with X, I don't think that it really transcends necessarily the things that it's doing in terms of the elements that's in the influences that it's kind of bringing in here. And Mike brought up the point of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and you can see that a little bit, and that kind of is brought up because you bring in real life influences and real life kind of background things with a fictional kind of movie, and the real life influences being the whole satanic panic stuff that they introduced at the beginning of the movie. People don't know that was big thing back in the 80s when you had heavy metal music, you had rock music with all these Satanism references there, sexual references, and then what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, I'm not sure if this is a direct tie, but similar to Late Night with the Devil, it does remind me of its opening of I'm not sure if you've seen this. It's a Japanese documentary called The Death of Western Civilization. And
I have not.
All the stuff of America of satanic panic and serial killers and rock and roll music and Twister Sister did go to court actually for, its usage of like language in their music, which is like still something to be debated about this day. But also like, I was almost expecting like the whole picture of like George Carlin being arrested and going to court for saying those words you can't say on TV. uh, it's definitely that era. And there's a lot of great background stuff that I personally really love, like the whole stuff like when she's just walking and she like steps on the Hollywood star fame. And it's Theda Ballroom. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you know about that actress, that's a very interesting connection. But of course, if like, it might as well just kind of be like a background thing.
Yeah. And then the other kind of they bring in the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, who is a real serial killer. He's been referenced in tons of pop culture. He's been in seasons like American Horror Story, and tons of documentaries have been made about him, everything like that. I mean, it's a red herring. I mean, it really has no real place in the story. I don't really even understand why it's necessarily there all that much. I mean, I get why it's there, but it just seems like just to throw you off. It doesn't really seem like really any, other than that, real purpose to be there. Because they constantly talk about it throughout the movie, and you hear news anchors talk about it, so it just seems like it's just kind of there just to throw you off for that.
Well, I kind of personally took it as like kind of like a joke in the movie of like, oh, there's a Night Stalker / Night Stalker like copycats, and then like, are we doing spoiler talk?
No, we're gonna do a review.
Okay,
No.
Okay, I won't. I won't spoil anything. Sorry,
Yeah.
but it's kind of nipped in the bud. Or at least part of it is nipped in the bud pretty early on without going too into detail.
Yeah, agreed.
But
If anything, the whole Night Stalker element of this, it just serves as a backdrop of the time. It's like this is a time when LA was kind of in the height of paranoia, especially with Richard Ramirez running around. You have this backdrop where you are focusing a lot on mostly female characters, like with Halsey, with her other adult entertainment friend that we run into, who's played by Chloe Farmworth. Yep, Amber James. But
Mia Goth continues to be a star. She continues to be really great. I thought she was really good.
Sorry, you gotta say it like her. She's a star.
Nice.
She's good. I mean, and she did a great job in X and playing dual roles there. And I thought she was, very good in Pearl. They are very much a little bit of a character study in Pearl. So I thought she was good.
The Academy not giving her a Best Actress nomination for Pearl, it's a crime.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of a better version of American Horror Story in a lot of respects. Because honestly, this is partially my fault. When I first started to watch like American Horror Story when I was like in middle to like high school, I didn't get that it's like, oh, this is schlock basically. But yeah, this definitely it walks the line between being like, I say also this movie more so than the other two walks the line between being like campy and like sometimes like genuinely very funny. Man, Giancarlo Esposito just kills it in his scenes.
Well, that's also kind of reflective of the era that this movie is paying tribute to. It was like the late 80s, the mid to late 80s. That's when a lot of movies kind of developed this. Guys like John Waters, guys like Brian De Palma, they kind of were at this point where they were very self-referential about the state of Hollywood, or delving into that kind of like very dirty, very grimy aspect
King of comedy era.
Yeah. Dusky, what about you? Well, let's say some of the things here.
I like the aesthetics. I think a lot of it is very clearly, each movie is a looking at Hollywood from the perspective of at the time. Pearl is very early on into the Hollywood land era. X is in the 70s, where it's very grimy and everyone's trying to make it, but not quite. And then the 80s is still grimy, but now you have a lot more color in film. Technology's increasing. 8mm is becoming the rise far more. They're able to kind of digitize some stuff, very early stuff in that metric. And now everything's kind of starting to become like a factory where the auteurs of the 70s is starting to be phased out with the factory setting of the 80s. And it's very interesting to see that dynamic. I think camera work wise, acting wise, I think this is very strong. I just wish the pacing was better. I wish the ebb and flow of the back and forth, well, taking in the movie, and what's happening outside with Maxine and how this is using as the background. I think it just doesn't pace itself as well as it should have.
Okay. Yeah, I did watch Pearl recently again, and that movie is like very well paced for the most part. It's like, and I was very entertained with that movie. I think also another thing is like, as like you guys have mentioned, like, you know, the background's definitely the 80s and stuff like that. But the background's utilized much more, like, in a much more effective character study manner with Pearl. Because with Pearl, it's like, it's part of her psychology as the character. With this, well, I still really, really like the cuts and stuff like that. The editing's also just like, oh, this is like kind of like what they did in the 80s and stuff like that. It's like this was when kind of like the start of nostalgia for older movies started to come into play. And that's fine, of course, but it's like I find Pearl a more interesting character study of the character than Maxine, with the usage of like kind of early Hollywood stuff of like you know, when Pearl's audition and all that stuff, as well as like just how the movie's edited and like the closing lights. In this, it's like it's there, but it's like it's a lot more fun. Which is like, of course, that it's not like a negative against the movie to say it's fun. It totally is fun, and it's like, but it's like, yeah, the effects are more so just there to like keep the audience entertained, as opposed to like having a double meaning. Then again, this movie is also, I have seen this argument on Twitter a few times of like a continuation of like X. So of course it's like that character study was done there, and this is just more like the adventure almost.
X was like an exploration about the fear of aging that both that Maxine has, about this whole idea of like living a life that she doesn't deserve and letting time just pass by, living with regret, which is reflected in the character of Pearl in that film.
Yeah.
And here we're like seeing her, okay, this is like the precipice of your big break, potentially.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, Hunter, what about you?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off that, that's actually why I like this film so much, because X is that character study of potentially getting older and, you know, what it all means.
All the missed potential, all of the opportunities that you couldn't pursue.
Yeah, this is, you know, the potential of your past, not just fucking up your future, but all of what you went through earlier in your life to get to this point being for naught anyway. And I think that in itself is a very interesting part of Maxine as a character. Also being set in this time period, it's very hilariously ironic how they talk about how, you know, Brooke Shields you know, got naked and they're in a Muppet movie, and like how that relates now, you know, to present day, and how that affects, or in often cases doesn't affect, you know, how people are cast and things like that, and how you know, there really is no such thing as bad press.
There's no barrier to entry to, you know, becoming a star anymore.
Exactly. You know, oh, go ahead, Mike.
No, sorry. It's just I've done like a lot of different kind of like stuff, like work as extras, but also like makeup work in the past when I was like a teenager. But also I've done stuff like, I've done auditions, and I've done stuff for like extra stuff in like Chicago, and I've done like different clubs. And man, it's like it wasn't like, you know, anything this grimy or dirty when it comes to like some of the sex work, but I have worked with like women who have like been like oh my god, it's in Chicago, it's like really close by the subway train, but it's a bar and it's like a very heavy metal band, and like the waitresses there are all dressed as like bunnies and stuff like that. And it's like you will come across those people. It's like, yeah, I'm trying to make it, all stuff, I'm doing all these side gigs, I'm trying to get before I get like turn 33. And it's like I see that, and I'm like, man, like someone here, like I know like there's definitely gonna be a lot of people relating to this, like a lot of like also female actresses as well who relate to this, and stuff like that, as well as just like kind of the general like kind of a vibe of working in like a porn industry, or like a industry of like sexual entertainment.
Any kind of entertainment where it's relied on
exploitation.
Exploitation, or that male gaze.
Of course.
It's like in there it doesn't matter how well you age. It's like you age like bread, not like wine.
Everyone will age, and that's the thing of like, you will definitely come across like people like MAXXXINE and her friends, especially like her two friends. Especially when one of them said, "I'm going to eat a hot dog now, so I don't have to eat one later, so people don't see me eat later." It's like I've met you.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, but between that, between the kills, there's a kill involving a car that I was just like, oh yeah, that's the stuff. I was like, oh, like that
Hunter turned into me a little bit.
Oh man, I was so giddy. Really every death in here. There's a death, without spoiling it, where it cuts back and forth between MAXXXINE reading the script and the death actually happening. I went, oh, that shit. Like, there's so many moments like that, or I just kept going like, go off, King. Like, oh, like Mr. West, like you're West I can get behind. So like it was,
and that's something that West played with a lot in both Pearl and X to a certain extent, because you'd have like dialogue that was reflected back and forth between different characters. You had actions or moments that would be foreshadowed, that would always come back into the script, into the action, and especially in the kills. It's like if you're really paying attention on a rewatch, you can really spot the moment where every main character's death is foreshadowed prior.
Josh, I know, because we've talked about this, was actually our first discussion, but I know you weren't a fan of this, but I think the only big horror movie especially, that has like a death similar to this, of like the 80s grindhouse film, especially with how it's shot, even with some of the transitions to makeup, would be kind of the Terrifier series. And even some like the Fog, like Terrifier 2 especially, with that one kill in like the what was it called? The Halloween store they were in. That definitely reminded me a lot of like, I haven't really seen this a lot in like a more art house film, so to speak. I love Terrifier. He's like, I know it's trash. Like, I know that's the guiltiest pleasure.
I do too, but I will never like defend it to somebody that isn't a horror or a slasher fan.
I will defend that movie, but more of as like, I respect the creator, I respect the artists, I respect the actors.
I tried selling my dad on that movie, like when he helped me move into my new place and we were like drinking at a bar, and I tried selling him on it, and I just showed like that image of Art the Clown like playing with that girl's dead body, and he just looked at me like, and he just looked at me like, oh my god, you need to be committed.
I mean, I've said that often. I've said it often about when Nick tries to sell me on horror, but
that's just because you're a pussy.
I mean, I like to sleep, and I'm not as deranged as some of you horror fans, but that's fine. What I will say in as far as a real quick wrap up is the pacing that I actually think this is my favorite pace out of the three, because it is mystery. And I think that's where the quote pacing issues might fall on people, because because X and Pearl are a little more straightforward, per X being a slasher and then Pearl being more in that that 20s realm. This is way more of a mystery, and so the way it plays out, the pacing is it's definitely taken a little bit to ramp up, especially in that first third, but I was never bored or not interested in what it was doing. I think it personally hit the ground running for me, and I was actually engaged all the way through. And again, I saw Despicable Me 4 before this, so I was like ready to go home. I almost didn't watch this. I was like, man, I'm gonna go home and take a nap.
I basically roasted
Marathon.
Hunter into going to see Maxine.
Yeah.
So Nick says that, but honestly, y'all, like fireworks are going off. My cats were like crying, so like I didn't get to bed till like 1 last night.
I definitely didn't have to change your nickname in our group chat to Quitter.
Yeah, which I immediately changed to the third afternoon tune co-host
Cool,
because I'm on here more than
Oh,
Nick.
you son of a bitch!
Because I'm on here more than Nick is. But I will say, like, it woke me up, and that's the biggest compliment I can give it. Like, because I went to go grab an energy drink, I didn't have time. I went to grab a coffee, didn't have time. I was like, fuck, I just need to watch it.
I remember that. You Despicable Me Maxine it.
Yeah, because
you gotta wash the taste of that out of your mouth.
Yeah,
we'll get into that when we get to our
and it worked. Like I was like, I honestly within 10 minutes, I was like sitting up in my seat. I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, there's a moment in like the first 10 or 15 minutes of that movie. It's like, if you weren't up before,
that alley scene we talked about. Yeah, like that like as a dude, I was just like, yeah. So I
haven't crossed your legs that hard since the movie Teeth.
Dude.
Everybody in my theater was screaming.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but really quick, Kevin Bacon, wonderful scumbag performance. It reminds me a lot of there was a Johnny Depp movie where he played like a mob boss and he like had like a bald cap on. It's based off a real life story.
Black Mass?
Black Mass.
Maybe. Yeah, it sounds like
yeah.
that. But like,
why do I remember that? God, movie's dumb. But yeah,
kind of. It was an entertaining performance of like a scumbag person, but he he kind of has ethics of like he has like kind of like a piece of shit laugh and like he's got the
it's based on a it's based on a Boston mobster.
Yeah,
famous Boston mobster.
Okay, yeah. You Hunter, you want to finish your thought and give a rating real quick?
Yeah. Like I said, look, like I'm not like Nick and you other sickos. I don't seek out like stuff that's gonna scare me because I hate being scared and I like my sleep. But I've been getting more into horror over the last couple years. I love like outside of like Scream 3 really upsets me because if Scream 3 is great, then that's like one of my favorite trilogies of all time. But Scream 3 pisses me off so bad that I just like it. It hurts me. I wish Scream 3 was better. But like as far as like a slasher film, Scream 2 I think is one of my. It might be one of my favorite sequels ever. I fucking love Scream 2. I love Scream 2. I love Timothy Olyphant in that movie. I think the way they do the Ghostface reveal is about as perfect as it gets. I fucking love Scream 2.
Timothy Olyphant was in Scream 3.
No, he's Scream 2.
He was in.
Hold on,
was
it? No, Olyphant Scream 2.
Oh, was it Scream 2? Okay.
Yeah, because Scream 3 is the one that has like
that's the movie within the movie with
and
then Scream 2 was in there in college.
Yeah, and that's where they spend that's where they spend the whole time calling Sydney's mom a whore, which just bothers me in the way they handle that is really gross. But with that said, it's great to see horror sequels that just get me hyped and that like really get me excited. And X was such a shot in the arm. I think that came out the same year as The Black Phone, I want to say. Which was another horror movie that I just went, oh yeah, this is how you do this shit, right?
Based on the short story I've read by Stephen King, King's Kid.
Another great Kevin Bacon performance in that as well. But I was so happy watching this again because I was so angry from Despicable Me. Like I just left that theater. It's one of those movies that just made me go like, wow, this is what like why do I do film?
You know what you need? You needed like to wait like 5 months now, and then you have to see this movie again and be like, did I really like this movie, or was I just happy after Despicable Me 4?
Oh, as exhausted as I was, trust me, I can tell. Like my grade won't change. Like
that's cool.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years. At this point I know how to not trick myself. But I left the theater happy. Not like, jovial, like, oh, that's so uplifting, but I but I left the theater going, hell yeah, this is something I can tell my horror friends to check out.
Nice.
If you enjoyed the first two, I really don't see why you won't at least like this one.
Mhm.
Your ranking will obviously vary as it will for anything. But this is something where I went, this will get an A24, bought like physical release, hopefully by Black Friday, and I'll be buying that shit on Black Friday. Like, I'm hyped to get this and get the soundtrack too, because if they do a soundtrack to this on vinyl, like I'm buying that shit day one. For me, as far as a grade, because I think not Maxine, I think Pearl is Pearl's of This Is Cinema. I'd give X like a high peak. So I'm actually gonna go low, like it's right there. I'm gonna go low. This Is Cinema. I adore this movie. I'm checking my letterbox right now. I think it's my number 3 favorite film of the year so far. Might be number 2.
Oh, wow.
And I've been watching a lot of stuff this week trying to catch up. So it'll be like number 3 or 4, because it's right there with Dune Part 2 for me. And I did not like the first Dune, by the way, just for perspective. So load this cinema for me. Go check this out as soon as you can. Enjoyed the hell out of this. Yeah.
Okay. I still think Mia Goth is good in this. I think, like I said, good cast in this. I think everybody does pretty well. Some, I think it's not really the actor, it's just kind of the execution there. Like you mentioned, Bobby Cannavale. Don't really necessarily, I don't think I liked him quite a bit as much in here as the detective, him and Michelle Moynihan.
Yeah,
Mike, please do me a favor. If you're gonna open stuff, please.
Oh, I'm not opening anything.
Okay, whoever is doing that crunkling stuff in the background.
Oh, that's me.
Mute that.
My
Yeah,
bad.
mute that shit because we can hear
Sorry.
it.
But Bonnie Cannavale and Michelle Moynihan there as the two detectives. Don't really necessarily, I didn't think they were that good in the movie myself, and then especially the way it ended with their story, I thought was a little goofy there, especially the last stuff that Bonnie Cannavale says there towards the end of the movie to her character. I thought it was a little kind of ham-fisted there in a way. The deaths, I think the deaths are really good here. I mean, Hunter mentioned a good scene here with one of the deaths where they cut back and forth between the script. I thought that was good and thought that was well handled. It's just that I don't think the movie's bogged down by references there, because like something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or certain Quentin Tarantino movies, it's like it's just about the references sometimes, and like as much as and about film and film references, I don't think that movie does that. I think it does some better stuff there as far as weaving it in. I mean, there's some more obvious stuff like you see in the trailer. They go to the Bates house there at the Bates Motel. They do that. That's so like, okay, here's a thing to kind of reference in it, and they come back to that a couple times. There's kind of that, but I would say I was a little disappointed in it. I think it's kind of a mixed bag of stuff here. I think there's got some high highs, but some kind of low lows here for me, and that's why I would give it a kind of a lowish, kind of 2 min for me here. Mia Goth is still good, and I think if you like the other movies, if you like X, if you like Pearl, you might probably like this as well. I just was kind of a little bit disappointed about the way it kind of turned out and the way that some things happened, and the kind of background of some things, of real life kind of historical things that feel like it's kind of just there as a red herring, as I mentioned before. So for me, I kind of give it a lowish tune in there for my taste there. Dusk. What about you? Final thoughts rating there?
Yeah, there's a lot of good things in this movie, despite its pacing issues or some of the things that I found kind of odd. And it's just inching out, being better than it just makes up for it, in my opinion. I still think the acting is strong. As goofy as this gets, it's a grindhouse movie from the 80s. It matches its tone. I'm glad to see it wrapped up in a trilogy. I know they're talking about maybe a 4th movie, which they could probably do, honestly. Wouldn't put it past them. But I think all considering, I think this is a solid. I think this is at least a solid to low tune in. I say this is a fair time in the movies. You want to check it out, be worthwhile. Just know you're going in for a very specific type of movie. This is very much a love of the art of horror movies, and much more focused on that And so if you keep that in mind, I think you'll have a solid time.
Okay. So you give it a kind of a low tune in there?
Yeah, I give it a low tune and kind of, but I feel better about it than you do, but I'm kind of in the same area.
Okay. Mike, what about you? Final thoughts, right?
As someone who was not as enthralled by X as other people was, but was a pretty big fan of Pearl, and despite the issues I have of this movie and the criticisms I have and understanding of other people, I found Maxine thoroughly entertaining. I think it's one of those movies you kind of have to know you get into. A light, kind of a light schlock movie or some light like comedy. I would say this movie is more of the camp horror, and I found this movie, despite its like kind of issues I had in its third half, very entertaining, uh, very well put together, and I would give it a high tune in, even if you haven't seen it in like, even if you're not like a huge X person or what are we calling this trilogy? The X trilogy?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. Even if you aren't as like as enthralled by the in trilogy as a whole. But yeah, and now we can of course look forward to the next big Mia Goth movie, the Blade movie that might never come out.
Dude, don't rub it in, man.
Can we not? Can we? You know.
Don't rub it in.
Come on, Feige, figure it out, asshole. All right, you're invited to the cookout. Come on, figure it out.
It's just a cool jacked black dude killing the fuck out of vampires. How hard is it? How hard?
So what will be your rating there, Mike?
I said like a high tune in. Like I would, for me, of course, I would say it's Pearl, maybe Maxine, and then X. Of course, that may be because like X was like very hyped up. I was like kind of late to the party, to me. So I was a bit like I wasn't as raptured by Mia Goth's performance as everyone else was. I think she's a very talented actress, but like, yeah.
Okay. Nick, what about you?
Yeah, so with me, pretty much all the films in the X trilogy, all of them sat much better with me upon rewatch. It was like when I first sat down to watch X, I wasn't as crazy about it, but upon listening to a lot of your reviews and like taking it in with that new lens, knowing, looking a little bit more for a lot of thematic elements that Ty West was going for in both X and Pearl, it gave me a new appreciation for both of those movies. And I kind of feel the same way I do about Maxine, where I see what he's going for a little bit better in this film. It's like he's going for that love letter to the like 80s grindhouse era of horror. He's like talking about the levels of what people are willing to do to achieve fame and success, especially in an industry like Hollywood, while also having that very frank conversation. It's like you could be in one of the like best horror movies possible, but it's not going to give you the level of superstardom. While also, I think integrating that backdrop of the 80s of this time period with the integration of the Night Stalker, for me, all of it worked really well. I still think that this is the weakest of the X trilogy, but I would still give this a very strong tune in.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah. So we gave our thoughts there on the capping of the X film series from Ty West there, Maxine, starring Mia Goth there. So a diverse array of opinions here. I probably was, I think, the lowest out of everybody here, but a lot of other guys, Mike, Hunter, Nick, they seem to really enjoy it. They seem to really like it. So,
I had a great time. I got to show all three. I got to show at least X to my partner, which I think out of all these is like both X and Pearl do a really good job at standing on their own. You can watch one without having seen the other.
That's true.
But Maxine, you pretty much have to have seen X in order to understand a lot of what's going on.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think it also depends on like what era of Hollywood or Hollywood movies do you really love or like. I'm personally like I'm a really big fan of like older 1950s, like kind of like early Americano kind of filming of like movies. So I think that's why I gravitate toward X more. But I can totally see like this being someone's favorite.
Yeah.
None of them are bad, in my opinion.
Yeah. No,
I see
agreed.
your opinion about it. I know X people talk about X like greatest slasher ever. I know I saw some of that people said about X when it came out there, but a lot of people super high on it. So I understand maybe coming into it later on and then being a little disappointed by it. So yeah, so that was our thoughts on MAXXINE. Let us know what you think in the comments below.